Waiting. Okay, got it. Okay, we are live. Hey, everyone. So let me hit record. All right. So welcome, everyone. I'm Shana Ritter.
I'm Thomas Ritter.
In case you don't know us already, we wanted to talk about something going on that's really important.
Yeah.
That's going on right now. We haven't gotten live in a long time to talk about things,
Yeah.
but this is so urgent, so important. We wanted to go live and talk about this.
We had actually wanted to talk about this for a while, and just life got in the way.
I got
busy,
sick.
and
I got sick,
and so we kept postponing it. But the subject keeps coming up, and it just it's not going away. It doesn't seem like it's getting better, and I'm concerned. It makes me sad too. It's the situation at the Spanish writing school.
It's a huge tragedy.
And it just seems like it's spiraling and getting worse.
So for those who are uninformed, let's actually back up a little bit and tell them the situation, what's going on, and then we can backtrack again a little bit more and tell them why that's important, why that's so relevant. But first, this is the situation.
Yeah, I mean, the Spanish writing school was privatized about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And ever since that time, more and more writers and chief writers left the school, were fired because they criticized the leadership. And the latest victim, so to speak, is Andreas Hausberger. He criticized the leadership and then got suspended. He's not allowed to enter the premises anymore.
And really, he's been there for how many years?
40 years, basically.
And
we have a picture that came through our Facebook feed that we can share that really illustrates the situation well.
Okay, you share the screen. I have to clean the little lens here. Excuse me, a little housekeeping real quick, guys.
Yes. So hold on a second. Here it is.
It's the keynote.
Yeah, it's the keynote.
Sorry.
I guess we can play it, and it's a little bigger. Yeah, so it's a picture from 2003, and you see eight writers, and out of these 8 writers, 6 have left the school since then. So if you start from the left side of the picture, it's Andreas Hausberger, who was now suspended this year. Next to him is Rudolf Rostek. In 2003 he was a writer, and now he is a chief writer. Then next to him, the number 3 from the left, is writer Rodleitner. He was fired, which actually I hadn't even heard about until recently. Then the number 4 from the left is chief writer Johann Riegler. He was suspended and went to court. Then in the middle is Klaus Krisch, the first chief writer. He was suspended for criticizing the leadership. Then the 3rd writer from the right is Harald Bauer. He committed suicide quite a few years back. Then the 2nd from the right is Bereiter Seibel. Now he's Oberbereiter, he's chief writer now.
He's one of the 2 that's
one of the 2, exactly. And on the far right, that's Helwig Rattennetter, writers. He was also suspended. And if you go back a couple of years, Alpo Kottas left in 2000, I think. He left pretty shortly after the privatization. He probably saw the writing on the wall and wanted to get out before things got ugly or got bad. And and there was somebody else that I was thinking about earlier who left, and now I can't remember who that was. But so here it's 6 writers in the picture are no longer there. Kottas would make the number 7. And each one of those writers had a good 40 years of experience, right? So if you multiply that, you have centuries of combined writing training experience that is now lost to the school.
And it's very important because the heritage of the school is passed from writer to writer. The teaching is all done orally, and it's passed from teacher to student.
What makes the school so unique is that it's been in existence for about 450 years now. And they've accumulated a huge amount of knowledge and experience, and they never wrote many things down, right? There are some handwritten manuscripts that were never published that are in the library of the school, but most of the knowledge was passed down from teacher to student in the arena. And I found a little quote from Franz Mayringer. He wrote a book in 1983. So he says, "Feeling is everything. The Spanish riding school has been going on for 400 years. The old instructor teaches the young horse, and that horse, when old and experienced, teaches the young instructor. When the instructor is old, he teaches another young horse, and so on." So that's really in a nutshell how they've been operating. And Charles de Canfi wrote in either one of his books or in an article, I couldn't find the reference, unfortunately. He was saying that since so much of the knowledge in classical dressage is passed on in the arena from the teacher to the student, through the horse, and so on, that if only one generation doesn't care enough to preserve that knowledge that it inherited and to pass it on to the next generation, then the knowledge is lost, right? And you cannot rebuild easily. Once that one generation lets the knowledge, the tradition die, that's it, basically, right? You lose centuries of knowledge and experience, and it takes many generations to rebuild. And there's actually, in that context, an interesting quote from Otto von Monteton from 1877. He was a Prussian cavalry officer, and he was worried about the quality of the training in the Prussian cavalry at the time. Very similar, train of thought, similar concern. He says, "A horsemanship from which artistic equitation has completely vanished cannot be rebuilt. Thank God it has not come to that yet, but we are heading in that direction. The teachers of equestrian art would then be missing, and it takes generations to educate new ones. Equestrian art is too difficult. You cannot learn it on your own. Without a teacher who helps get them over the hill, everybody only gets stuck," right? Yeah. His concern was back then that people got way too interested in steeplechasing, thoroughbred racing, fox hunting,
which were the
cross-country
fashions
racing,
of the time.
Yeah. And people were not so interested in the boring, unspectacular dressage work in the arena anymore, right? But it's similar in the sense that if you let that knowledge die, if you don't have the teachers anymore, then, well, you cannot recover from that, or at least not within a reasonable time frame, right? And the Spanish riding school, has lived through wars and diseases, and it's always been able to bounce back. But there were always these older trainers available who were able and willing to come back to the school and continue the tradition. Like, when Alois Budheisky took the school over in 1939, he said the state of affairs was not very good. They had three chief riders who were excellent, but not interested in teaching really a whole lot. Then they had 4 riders who were so-so, he says, not super, not especially great artists in the saddle, and they had 1 assistant rider. And then Podhaisky impressed on the chief riders that it was very important that they pass on their knowledge, and he was able to increase the number of riders from 4 to 9, I guess, and he increased the number of assistants or apprentices to 4. And because Austria was part of Nazi Germany at that time, he was able to select the best riders from the German cavalry, because the Spanish riding school had been put under the protection and administration of the German army. And Franz Mayringer was actually one of those riders that Podhaisky saw. I guess he took a tour around the German cavalry units and liked the way Mayringer wrote and brought him to the school. Yeah, and then in 1955, Meiringer and Franz Rochowanski and a few others left the school because they didn't get along with Podhaisky, apparently. He was not an easy person. And
That's a whole other thing
yeah.
we could get into sometime.
So the school had a shortage of trainers, basically, and then they brought a few of the retired trainers back, you know, like Alfred Zerha, who was Karl Mikolka's main teacher. So, and they were able to continue the tradition because they still had a pool of knowledgeable older writers who were willing to return, and now that seems questionable. And if the older, you know, former chief writers and writers are willing to return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about why this matters. Why this matters and why we care, why this is relevant to us, why we're talking about it.
Yeah, and for me personally, the Spanish writing school was always the big role model. That was always the ideal that I used to strive for. And I always thought I want to write like those guys when I grow up. You know, that's what I want to do. This is, you know, the best, the highest standards. These are the best in the world. And when I was like 18, 19, I read Podhaisky's autobiography, and that was very inspiring for me. It's also the reason why I wanted to write Lipizzans, you know, and all of my teachers that had a big influence on me were in some way connected to the Spanish writing school, either directly or indirectly, right? Like in the 1980s, my old teachers, they were students of Egon von Neindorf, and I wrote with Egon von Neindorf a little bit too, and his two main teachers were Ludwig Zeiner, who was a Bereiter in the Spanish writing school in the 1920s, 30s, and then he left the Spanish writing school, went to Berlin. And Richard Wädchen was Egon von Neindorf's other main teacher. And Wädchen was at the Spanish writing school for 12 years in the beginning of the 20th century. He was a student of Johann Meixner, first chief writer Johann Meixner. He was an external, you know, civilian student, and then trainer at the writing school. So that part of my background, you know, came from the Spanish writing school. And then when I moved to the US, I was able to write with Hubert Rohrer a few times before he passed away. And he was in Vienna at the Spanish writing school from 1956 to 64, I think, under Podhaisky. And then that was in the in the early 90s when I was able to write with him. And then in the early 2000s, Shana and I were both able to write with Karl Mikolka regularly.
Before that, Arthur Kotas.
Yeah, we did one with Arthur Kotas, but still. Yeah, and then we wrote with Karl Mikolka
exclusively for quite a while.
Yeah, Mikolka, he was at the Spanish writing school from 1954 to 68, and then he left for Brazil to coach the Olympic team. And the training methodology that we use and that we teach is based on what we learned from him, you know. And his main teacher in the Spanish writing school was Alfred Zerha, but then also first chief writer Ilbinger, and Ignaz Lauscher was also one of his main teachers. So that tradition goes back before Podhaisky. Zerha was from the Austrian Empire, basically. Yeah, so that it's a very long tradition, you know. And so, you know, the Spanish writing school, training methodology is really in our DNA, and we identify very much with it, and that's our home, so to speak, philosophically.
Yes.
And so it's very sad to see how these 450 years of tradition and knowledge and experience have, you know, deteriorated and decayed over the last 20 years to the point where it's really questionable whether the school will survive and whether it will be able to regain its old stature of the best writing training institution in the world. I've been thinking a lot about, well, what can be done or what would need to happen to save the school, to recover the quality basically of the training. And I think there are three main points that would have to be addressed, or that three things that would have to change. The first thing is that you would have to fund the Spanish writing school in such a way that they no longer have to cover their own expenses or turn a profit.
Yeah, that's a big factor here.
During the empire, they were part of the imperial court, so there was always enough money there. They never had to worry about, where the money for the next load of hay comes from, or where the next, load of sand and shavings for the arena pudding comes from. There was always money there, right? And then after the First World War, after the end of the empire, the school was put under the Ministry of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And when Austria became part of Nazi Germany, there was a power struggle between the NSDAP and the German army, and the army won, which was probably better for the school because there were still cavalry units in the German army and knowledgeable officers who, had an understanding and respect for classical art of training. And then, after 1945, school went back under the Ministry of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably make more sense to move them out of the Ministry of Agriculture into the Ministry of Culture,
Mm-hmm.
like
the museums,
opera houses, theaters, and so on. I think that would be a better place. And the school could be funded like an opera house or a museum, right? You could create sponsorship programs, like if you go to opera houses in the US, they have these sponsor circles, whatever, a bronze and a silver and a gold and a platinum circle, where people donate different, amounts of money and then maybe get little gifts in return and so on. So if somebody is good at marketing, they should be able to come up with a program that secures enough funding.
Mm-hmm. But it should never be expected to pay for itself, because it's a cultural institution.
Right.
It's like the museums aren't expected to pay for themselves.
Exactly. And
they may, but they're not expected to.
Yeah. And in the age of the internet, you could have online events, for example, Q&A sessions with the writers. You could have webinars where they teach something, about training or something.
That's of course where our minds go, because that's what we do.
Yeah. And there's so many possibilities to make money that way.
And so many other ways. There's so many creative solutions, but they seem limited in their comprehension.
It's still new ideas there, But so ideally, the funding should be so secure that the school could afford not to do any public performances for a year and just focus on training. Because the problem is when you have to pay your own expenses and maybe you can make a profit, and your only source of income is ticket sales and the gift shop, basically, then you realize at some point, I can't sell enough tickets to pay for my expenses. So what are we going to do?
With the current number of shows. Right, so they've increased the number of shows.
Well, they doubled them.
Yeah. And now they have, because the horses are working so hard, they've had to increase the number of horses that are in the shows, which means they had to lower the skill level required for the horses. They have horses in there that shouldn't be working so hard anymore.
Yeah, it's I mean, they increased the number of shows, I think, from about 45 shows a year to, I don't know, 90 or 70.
And that's so in addition to the morning exercise, which is really kind of it's a quasi performance. It's not, I mean, it's training, but
and I mean, if you think about it, those of you who who compete, how would you feel about having to compete every weekend, basically, out of the year?
Let me think about it.
Go to a show every weekend, and competing and training often don't harmonize that well, because you're always preparing for a show, so you may not be able to address training issues or move the horse to the next level, because you need a little time where you don't have to worry about writing your test and doing this and doing that. And so that's a problem. And
you don't want to open a can of worms right before a performance or a test, because you don't know, sometimes things get a little bit messy for a little while. You mess up the transitions and things get a little bit screwy while you're reassembling things so that it can be better. But you need that ability to be able to take that time to do that in the training.
And of course, you can't train a horse 365 days a year. You're going to kill him, right? You cannot perform twice a week, basically,
They're not machines.
52 weeks out of the year. And as a result of that drastic increase in the workload, now the horses, have soundness issues. Like I was told that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on, there were hardly ever any lame horses from the Spanish riding school. They stayed sound until their mid to late 20s, and they hardly ever needed a vet to treat a lame horse. And now they have 4 horses with a neurectomy because of that.
Explain what that is.
Yeah, it's a nerve cut, basically, and usually in the front legs, right, so that they don't feel the pain anymore.
And they can keep going even though there's something wrong.
So that's something that is usually more of a problem with jumpers, not so much with dressage horses, but so now there are clearly 4
unheard of in the past,
and just didn't happen, right? And that's the result of having to train basically every day, show every week, and these are demanding performances, right? And the quadrille, I think, was about 20 minutes long initially. Now they have to cut it in half. In the past, they had one show number with airs above the ground under saddle, and then one show number with work in hand, where they did some airs above the ground as well. And now that was put into one. Now it's only one show number rather than 2 distinct ones. So this drastic increase in the number of performances and events has led to soundness problems, but also deterioration of the quality, plus the hemorrhaging of the experienced teachers. There's no longer that quality control and the teaching and supervision that used to be there, right? So, but reducing the workload is only possible if you have financial freedom, right? So that's extremely important to remove the responsibility of paying for themselves from the school. And the school, I think, is also paying for the stud farm in Piva, actually, not just for itself. And the stud farm is very expensive and can't generate revenue as easily as the school. They have they can sell horses, and they
and breeding
can visit. You can visit the stud farm and that sort of thing. But that's a big financial burden. Then the second thing I think that needs to change is that the first chief rider who is in charge of the training needs to be in the hierarchy above the business manager, or at least on the same level, and with a veto power, so that the business manager, who's not a horse person, cannot make decisions that negatively impact the training. Like, let's just double, the number of performances per year.
Right.
So the chief rider needs to be able to say, no, we can't do that, right? For obvious reasons. But what I don't understand is that the business manager doesn't see, like, from the business perspective, I am trying to be profitable by selling a product, right? And I can only sell this product if it's good quality, right? The brand of the Spanish riding school is these are the best horses and riders in the world. This is the best riding school in the world. And people will only pay good money for tickets if that perception is still valid, if people still think, yeah, these are the best, right? But if the perception is like, they're so, my trainer at home can do a better job than those guys, then nobody will come and pay any money.
Or if they're no longer upholding the highest principles,
Mhm.
people won't support it by
Right.
going. Those of us, I mean, the average tourist that is unaware
Mhm.
may still go because it's on their tour program. But those of us who are riders, we will stop going
Mhm.
because we don't want to support the measures that they're going to, the changes that they've made.
And also all these fundraising ideas with sponsorships and this and that and the other, they are completely contingent on the public believing that this is high quality work.
Yeah.
Also webinars and Q&As. I would only go to a Q&A or webinar if I'm convinced that the teacher knows what he's talking about and he gives me valuable information that I can use on my horse. But if I think that, well, they're not that good and they make their horses lame, then why would I listen to them, right? So then that source of income goes away, right? So even from just a strictly business point of view, it doesn't make sense to allow the quality of the training
Short-sighted
to deteriorate, right? And so the training needs to be protected, and the first chief rider needs to be in charge and not subordinate to the business manager of the school. Yeah, and then the third thing that would need to happen is that the old chief riders and riders come back. And I think that's going to be the most difficult problem to solve, because I'm not sure that they still want to, because I think there's so much bad blood by now.
Yeah.
And some of them are now, I think, in their 70s. I don't know how hard they still want to work. Financially they don't need it.
They
And the deficits that have accumulated are so big, that it's now a gigantic effort to try and catch up and bring everybody on track again, bring the horses and the riders up to speed. But without these old chief riders and riders, you lose that tradition. You can't just hire some international Grand Prix trainer, and even if they're really good and they produce good horses and everything, it wouldn't be that tradition anymore. It would be different. It would not be the Spanish riding school anymore.
So the newest news was that they were going to bring in dressage judges, right?
Yeah, quality control by hiring competition.
What do you think of that? Tell me, what do you think of that?
Let me actually see if I can go to our page and look at comments.
Yeah, there are a few.
Yeah.
You could read some of the comments I'm actually streaming in a lot of places. YouTube,
Okay.
my personal page, our Facebook page, our Facebook groups.
Yeah.
We're streaming everywhere, guys.
Yeah, so here Suzanne Copley says, if the Spanish riding school were a cultural institution as it should be, time would be immaterial. Slow and steady brings the quality. That the horses are the real losers is evident in the current number of lameness difficulties. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you speak to the
sorry.
mic? Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I don't know if you could hear that.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with Suzanne Copley that you need to take the time that it takes, give the horses the time they need to develop, otherwise you destroy them.
Yeah.
And the horses, of course, they're always the ones that suffer. They're the ones who lose, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so but you can only operate with that mindset that time doesn't matter if you're financially secure. So a lot of things come back to the financing has to change. So that you have that freedom and say, well, I don't care if it takes another 5 years or whatever to get to a certain stage. And but if you have to buy your own hay and so on, that that's difficult, right? And those of you who have their own boarding stables or training stables, you know exactly how hard that is to make money with horses. Gail Birkin says, I was horrified at Hootler's suggestion of having competition judges evaluate riders. Exactly. That's a big problem, because of course the judges are not from that tradition. They have a little bit a different perspective, than the Spanish riding school. So they will try to make the riders at the school conform to the general competition scene, which is, problematic too. Ideally, it should be the other way around, that the old Spanish riding school should hold judges seminars where the judges get educated by the riders, and in the past that was possible. I think they may even have done that. But trying to institute some sort of a quality control by having competition judges come and judge the school, I think is a bad idea. That I think is going to lead in the wrong direction. It basically shows that the leadership doesn't really understand the nature of the school and the history and the traditions. Exactly. And that's the problem you run into when you have a business person leading the school who doesn't really have a background in classical dressage and who's not, familiar with the institution on that level and that depth, So read a couple more comments here. Sabine Poros.
Comments on here too.
Okay. Sabine Poros says priceless knowledge, would be incredibly sad to lose it. Yeah, exactly. That's it makes me sad to think about that. Loriella Spinica says you both are speaking the truth, sad situation. Deborah Woodward says, so practically the school needs to move with the times. In terms of, making money online, absolutely, as whatever it takes to create the revenue. To be
able to preserve the heritage and the classical tradition, yes. Sometimes, change with sometimes, it doesn't mean you adopt everything. I think the decision to have the training overseen by dressage judges is a terrible idea. Not that there aren't some really excellent dressage judges out there. There are, but most of them, sorry if you're a judge. Sorry, not sorry. And go ahead, because I have comments too.
Julie Williams says the loss of the Spanish riding school could have dire long-range consequences to the rights of horse ownership in general across the globe. That's true. There is that, that can become a problem in the future. Sabine Pora says, I have the impression that short-term success, mainly for the management ego, is valuated higher in society than long-term sustainability, which stands also for knowledge. Doesn't matter if we talk about Spanish riding school or big companies. And Gail Birkin is saying Hootler's plan is the same old story, just presented with a different cover. And, Julie Keys is saying there's so much to be gained by all the equestrian world by keeping the Spanish riding school in the correct form. It truly should be considered a cultural treasure to be preserved, as you said earlier, like the museums. Absolutely. And if the taxpayer has to chip in, that's okay too, because the Spanish riding school is a tourist attraction. If it has, maintains a high quality, people will come from all over the world to see it. They stay in hotels, they eat in restaurants, they go shopping.
The tourism taxes go towards that.
So the city of Vienna and the country of Austria will make money off of the Spanish riding school, even if they have invest some taxpayers' money, they will get money back. So
it's a lot better than many other things they invest the taxpayers' money in. Sabrina Burnett says riding is supposed to create healthy horses, not cause lameness.
Right. Exactly.
And she said, bring Andreas Hausberger. Bring him on. We should. Andreas, if you're watching, we'd love to have you on. Marley Spoon says, so how are the riding schools in Jerez and Lisbon funded?
I don't know. I have no connection to them. I
Yeah.
don't know. In Lisbon, I suspect is probably government owned. Perez, I think, was founded in the 70s by Alvaro Domecq. Yeah, he's a big wine producer and breeder, and I think he's from such a wealthy family that he was able to at least get it started. I don't know what happened afterwards. I don't know if the country of Spain, if the government somehow got involved.
Sorry, dogs.
Yeah, they might have. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the funding is like.
Dog. Sabrina says 70s and loaded with wisdom. Yeah. These were earlier comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Cottas must be in his 70s by now, and I think Klaus Krisch must be at least in his late 60s, maybe early 70s also. Yeah, and so the clock is ticking, you know, so they're not going to be around for the next 50 years, you know, so have to tap into that knowledge, you know, while they're still here.
Grab them now while they're still alive and healthy enough to be able to teach.
Yeah, exactly.
And train.
Enough.
Yeah. And Zaradnik says, "Oh, good grief." Sabrina Burnett says it's fucking ridiculous to bring in judges. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Marlies says complete bollocks, totally inappropriate. And says, so what can we do besides signing a petition?
That's a good question. You know, I don't know. I don't know what we
don't know either. That's why we're doing this. We don't have the solution, but I think we need to talk about it. All of us need to be talking about this. By just going, oh, that's too bad, and going on with our lives. That's not going to fix the situation.
Oops, there were there are more newspaper articles coming out in Austrian newspapers, and it sounds like the leadership is a little bit surprised at the shitstorm that it caused. They didn't see that coming somehow.
They're so out of
I think if people don't let it die, if people keep talking about it and criticizing the leadership, at some point maybe, you know, they feel like it hurts their image or the brand of the school, you know, and maybe they have to change something, you know. I don't know. It's the changes that you know, I think need to happen. They would basically have to come from within the school. They would have to make the decision. Yes, we have to change the funding. Yes, we have to change the hierarchy a little bit. And we have to kiss and make up with the old writers and see if they want to come back. But that probably also means that all the leadership now has to go.
To go, and huge apologies need to be given. I don't think anybody's willing to do that. Even for the sake of the school, unfortunately. Robin Brookman says very interesting and informative discussion. Anne Zaradnik says, my biggest takeaway from the week-long theory class I had there 5 years ago, the many times someone said, in being there is time, I still say that to myself when I get frustrated with my horse. It reminds me to take the long view.
Absolutely. That used to be.
It's the gold standard.
It reminds me of a little anecdote. I think Karl Mikolka told us that at a clinic that when he was a young writer, you know, assistant writer or apprentice, the teachers would ask them, so how do you do this and that, or, you know, technical questions. And then I guess the correct answer was, I take time and then I do whatever, XYZ, you know. So it was always take a breath, you know, take your time, and then you can go into the technical details. And so I like that. And then Podhajski writes about that too in his, I think my horse is my teachers or so, that he adopted that attitude that I have time. So like also when he would ride a horse that he hadn't met before, don't try to show off by riding all kinds of fancy movements, but do the basics, get to know the horse, take time to build relationship, figure each other out, and then you can move into more advanced work at some point. But always this, take your time, you know, take a breath, think about it.
Introduce yourself to the horse, and let the horse introduce himself to you. Marley said there's so much wrong with competition dressage. It would be so sad to transpose all of this onto the Spanish writing school. And Tanya says, you two are looking very tan. It's hot here.
Summer's here.
It's still April, barely still April, but it's still April and it is hot. It's much hotter this year. Catherine Trevelyan says, what are the reasons that writers get fired? Is an explanation provided?
Well, good question. The writers have been unhappy with management for a long time because they feel like management compromises the quality of the training and the health of the horses. They care
about the horses they're training, of course.
Yeah. So they criticize, they are probably shut down and brushed off, but I would think by the government, and they become more assertive and then they get fired.
Insubordination.
Yeah.
That's why Hausberger was fired.
Yeah. And efficient legal too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if you speak up and tell the directorship that they're ruining the school and that they're basically making horses lame, etc., then they have to go.
Yeah. Because
there are these CEOs that come from the Hudler's from the brewery business, and Gürtler was from the hotel business, and of course, if you run a hotel and you don't like the chef or you don't like the head waiter, you kick him out, you hire somebody new. I mean, there are probably enough people who are competent in that position. But
to them, these people are just replaceable.
Exactly.
The writers are replaceable.
Yeah. But the chief writer at the Spanish writing school is irreplaceable, But I don't know. If you have somebody like Picasso, and you don't like the way he talks to you, you can't fire him and hire another Picasso who is just as good and creative and does the same kind of work.
There are a dozen. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So these chief writers, they're artists, and they have this incredible wealth of knowledge and experience. You can't replace them, and then you can't hire them from the outside. You make them yourself. You grow them yourself. In another 30, 40 years. Yeah, exactly. And that I think that's what these business managers just don't understand. That it's not a brewery. You can't just fire the brewmaster and hire somebody else, or you can't fire the chef and hire a new one. It's not like that.
Or the front desk person, you can't just find another chief writer.
Yeah.
Marley said, if the majority of the old knowledge has already left, there's the option of setting up a new Spanish writing school somewhere else, new old Spanish writing school somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know, but with whom?
With whom? These writers, are they all going to want to go somewhere? With what money? And
you'd have the same issue with funding and with getting the old writers on board to work for the school. And also, I mean, that building, that is a big part of that character and that tradition.
Have you ever been there? I mean, some of you I know have. If you've never been there, it is just breathtaking. The entire area is just breathtaking.
Here a couple more. Let me read a few.
Yeah.
Susan Copley is saying, absolutely, we as writers know that so well. Things take time. Yes, to judging seminars, as many competition judges have begun to ignore classical principles in the moments of the classes. They can only reward what they know and fear to stand up for what's correct. And Michelle King says, if the Spanish writing school was a Monet or Renoir painting, the world would bend over backwards to preserve it. Yeah. How do we persuade the public that this wonderful institution is worth the same? You're right. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but that didn't seem to help. In a
Public
way.
awareness.
Yeah.
I guess.
And Sabine Pora says, maybe try to learn as much as possible from people who are still teaching this knowledge to public students, at least to show that it is important knowledge. Yeah, I mean, get it while you can, right? While there are still people around who have the knowledge.
Who were taught by.
Try to write with them. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Catherine Trevelyan says, that's awful, getting fired for protecting the health of the horses. It is awful. And protecting the health of the horses and the heritage, the tradition of the teaching. It's awful. Yes. Sabrina says the standards and traditions are irreplaceable. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true.
Yeah.
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 Francis says, and also Thomas and Shana, I think you two should be involved and be in control of it. Oh God, I don't want that job.
Sorry, we love our life here. I know,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't want us anyway,
No.
honestly. They don't want some American girl and,
Yeah, and it's a very political job. I'm very bad at politics.
Yes,
I could not. No. But thank you.
I mean, really, Hausberger, Krish,
Yeah.
these guys,
Yeah.
Hottest, these guys should be in charge.
It's an
These guys-
Austrian national treasure, and
Yeah.
it should be run by Austrians.
I agree. Yeah.
That was actually a consideration also when Podhajski took the school over. There were a couple of other, directors being discussed, by the German army back then. A couple of Germans and Podhajski and the commander in chief there in the German army was saying it should be really run by an Austrian if possible. And actually, Felix Bruckner had been contacted. Felix Bruckner was a German who had a big writing school in near Berlin, and later he became the director of the military writing and driving school in Kampnitz. He came out of the cavalry writing school in Hannover, and when he was approached whether he could do it, because Podhajski had heart issues, he was out of commission for quite some time in the hospital, and wasn't clear if he would be able to come back and take on the school. And Bruckner said, well, yes, in a pinch I'll do it, but only if there's really no way that Podhajski can do it. He said, absolutely, this is such an Austrian institution. This needs to be managed by an Austrian. It would be
And
an insult otherwise.
And those guys, not just any Austrian, but the Austrians that have been there for 40 years, they are the ones that really should be in charge.
And that again reminds me of something that Karl Mikolka told me many years ago. We were talking about that at the time. I think Isabel Weert and Antje van Grunsven were invited to teach clinics or something at the school. I think that was in the early 2000s. And he was so outraged. He said that is such an insult to everybody who ever worked and taught and wrote at the school that he just was completely unacceptable for him. So just imagine then some foreigner running the school. That's just no. No.
Sabrina says Karl Mikolka said there wasn't a book because it was taught from the experienced writer to the elites. Every ride is different, and there's not a simple formula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're all a little against writing books there. Again, Karl Mikolka told me that I think either Lauscher or Ilbinger, one of the old chief writers, was saying, without books there are no bullshitters or something like that. They were all against that, right? And I at one point I had asked Mikolka, why don't you write a book? I mean, he was a really good author. He could really explain well.
Holmes was always trying to get him to write a book.
Yeah, and he wrote articles that were brilliant. And I thought, man, you could be the next Steinbrecht. I mean, your book would be every bit as good, if not better, right? And then he was like, oh, you don't do that. It's like, you teach, one horse, one rider, one teacher, he was completely against that, unfortunately, right? Because you can preserve some knowledge by writing it down. It has its place, right? It has its merit.
It's a good support to the one-on-one instruction.
Yeah.
Don Stewart, sorry. Do you know how the Austrians and the people of Vienna feel about it all?
Oh, I don't know. In a lot, I mean, people who are, classical writers, they are appalled. They're sad.
Our friends that are writers there.
They're outraged.
Yeah. But the average people, non-writers, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know in how far non-writers are really aware of what's happening or in how far they care. I don't know. But yeah, the writers, especially around Vienna, the writers of the Spanish writing school, they also teach and ride horses in the vicinity and stuff. And so they don't have the greatest reputation among people that we've talked to, they often say, I wouldn't take lessons from them, or I wouldn't let them ride my horse, and they ride with so much pressure, and so yeah,
All the good ones have left.
yeah.
Well, who's there still? There's
Well, there's still
there's a few
good riders
ones.
and talented
Rustic
riders.
is very,
Yeah,
very beautiful
yeah,
rider,
but yeah.
you know.
I mean,
But-
Hausberger says that it's you know, spiraling. You know,
It
it's
is.
just getting worse and worse. Yeah. Yeah. We have Christine Heinrich is saying maybe there was you know, infighting among the chief riders with their experiences and FN judges or competition judges. Yeah, I don't know the internal politics. I don't know in how far they got along. I mean, historically, there was often rivalry, and you know, people, you know, colleagues that, you know, they're competitors on some level too with each other. I mean, Podhaisky writes about that in his autobiography too, like back in the 40s, 50s, and so on, that the chief riders often didn't like each other and didn't get along well. And
There's politics within the school.
probably always.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
I don't know any details. Yeah, but yeah, most likely there's some rivalry, and they don't always see eye to eye, I would think. Yeah. So then Copley was saying international televised fundraising. Yeah, it's like a NPR fund drive, you know, something like that. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if you get good marketing professionals together, I'm sure they could come up with concepts that are
Innovative.
able to raise money and enough money, you know.
Innovative, of value, forward thinking, really, you know, interesting, that grab people, bring awareness to the situation. There's so many benefits, so many things you could do.
Terry Douglas was saying, come on, Thomas, where's your spirit of adventure? About not wanting the job.
He'd have to leave his precious food forest
No.
that he's
No.
creating. I don't think you could tear Thomas away from that.
Oh, see, Gail Birkin says, I have friends that are business people and they side with management. They support the opera, but horses are beyond them. Yeah, if they're not horse people themselves, they don't understand. They probably don't see why this is important, or how this is relevant, or why they need so much money, or why they need so much time. Why can't they crank out horses, you know, like in a faster time frame? You know, it's always been my experience too, that people who don't really ride and who are not rooted in the tradition, they have no understanding. Why do you need a level arena? Why do you need, you know, whatever?
Why do you need a corner? Can't you just put all these things in the corner? You know.
Yeah.
Why do we even need corners? Why don't you just make a big oval? You know.
Christine Heinrich says there are concepts and those that we should support. I'm not aware of any, but yeah, if there are some, that would be a good thing. If somebody has ideas or comes across good concepts, make them public, talk about them, share them.
And actually, you know, if anybody knows anything, if you're watching this and you know of anything or have any ideas, or you want to talk about some of this, contact us. You know, you can email us at ritterdressage@gmail.com. You can contact us through the Facebook page too. Oh, what?
North says, on Artistic Dressage, the live feed broke down.
Sorry.
I'm watching it on this class.
No, we're in lots of places.
Okay.
We're in lots of places. We're in the, I can't control that. That's a heck thing. Sorry.
Kristen Heinrich says we should look and search, you know, what it's
Let's all get
worth,
talking.
or
You know, even if we're not the ones that do it, we can connect people to other people, and all of us working on this together, we can make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
It's worth it. Worth it. And this is going to be gone in our lifetime, guys.
Otherwise, it's really close. I mean, it's like the country says, right? If one generation doesn't care to preserve the knowledge and pass it on, it's gone. And you cannot recreate it. You cannot bring it back. You know, that's sort of the tragedy of it.
It's like trying to bring back an extinct species after it's gone. You know, you can bring back something that might in some way simulate it. It might be somewhat similar, but it'll never be it. Never. There are genes, precious genes that will be lost forever. Same thing. There is precious knowledge and heritage that will be lost forever.
So Terry Douglas is saying, I hope we can all make a difference. It started downhill when Krish was fired.
Yes.
And Terry also said exactly, horses are just pretty tools. Non-horse people don't get it. Sadly, many horse people also don't get it. Jody Seaton says, how about you two interview some of the masters from the tradition? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We could reach out to them and
Yeah.
see if they're
you,
interested.
You guys,
in,
if you're watching, or if you know some of them,
yeah.
reach out to us.
Yeah,
Please.
I think would be very
Would love
interesting.
to do that.
Definitely, that would be a good way to go to create more public awareness by interviewing them.
Talking about the situation. And whatever else they want to talk about.
Christine Heinrich says, thank you. It's worth it. And thank you that you're basically engaging in this.
Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you for watching. It's,
supporting us by watching and sharing this, sharing the video, sharing it with your friends, letting others know.
Yeah, sometimes it's just so, I don't know, frustrating or so saddening that it feels good to talk to others who feel the same way, right? Otherwise, feel isolated.
I like to talk about happy topics, and this is not so happy, but it is really important.
And there is no easy way out. There's no easy solution. I mean, I have ideas. Like I said, I think about what would need to happen, but each one of these elements is so big and so difficult to bring about that I don't know how to do that. I mean, we're not connected. We have no power. We're not billionaires. If you were Bill Gates, you could just buy the school and
But you wouldn't if you were Bill Gates, right?
Exactly. Probably not.
Sorry, Facebook. Sorry, don't ban me because.
But I mean, if somebody could put together a trust fund so the school lives off the interest, that would be great. But who has $1 billion lying around? Exactly. So that would be great, right? That would take care of all the problems right there. But it's not likely to happen. So, see here. Laurent Waldman says, that's just to make sure it's French, so I don't say anything wrong. Laurent says that's, oops, it just jumped. That's serious. It's basically a page of equestrian history and tradition is being deleted in the name of rentability and ego's personality. But it's a good way of putting it. It's very good way of putting it. And Susan Copley says, you mentioned NPR, get their producers involved, National Geographic types, putting a team together that touches on knighthood and moves the writing forward through time. But today, a mixture of live performance with a video performance. Start with a writer who rides. I know someone. Hey, that's an interesting idea.
Let's start getting people connected.
That's an interesting idea. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Just network and let's start connecting people and get some ideas put together. Get some people moving on this. Yes.
Yeah, and Sabine Poros says, let's try to keep the hope and the knowledge. Yeah, definitely. Gail Birkin says, it truly depresses me. I feel such a loss. Thank you both and the contributors for your support. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, 450 years of history, right? This school survived 2 world wars. It survived, I think, the Turkish wars, Turkish invasion in the 1600s, and all kinds of stuff.
And it can't survive capitalism. That's what's going on. They're trying to make this profitable. They decided the school needs to be profitable. A business it needs to be run like a business.
Are there any more YouTube comments? Maybe we should.
I don't even think I'm not even on YouTube. I was on one of the Facebook groups. I can't read comments on there. I'm not logged in, so it's not showing me the comments.
You can see it here somewhere. But so these are my thoughts, our thoughts on the subject. Yeah, I like if everybody kind of keeps this in mind and thinks of, what could be done, what would need to happen, that kind of thing, and how could we create funding, a solid financial basis for the school, and then of course the restructuring of the hierarchy, that is something that has to come from
No comments.
within. So somebody would have to believe that this is a good idea, right? So somebody would have to convince someone, within that administration of the school that maybe they need to reorganize their personnel structure somehow,
Yeah.
And then, when that's all done, you can contact the old writers, right? I'm sure they probably won't be interested in coming back
As
if
is.
the
If nothing
directors
changes.
are still there. Yeah,
Yeah.
If they don't have more input, and also if they have to work under these financial pressures, I'm sure they're going to say it's not possible. I can't do it. I won't do it. So yeah. So those are big obstacles.
And, some of them left or were fired, because they were standing up for the horses. And I'm sure they won't come back unless changes are made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably not impossible, but it's super difficult. It's a gigantic
It's
task.
going to take a big action
Yeah.
to make that happen. Now,
Yeah.
it's possible,
Yeah.
but not without, I think.
Yeah.
I think it will never happen without a lot of public pressure.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the leadership would also have to realize that it's in their economic interest to make these changes, because otherwise the school will die, nobody will want to see it, the reputation will be destroyed, and then all that cultural capital that they had would be gone, so that would be sad. I don't know.
Yeah. On that cheery note, we can wrap it up. We've been here for over an hour.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm. It's getting dark in here.
Yeah. So yeah, let's
So
say
we'll wrap it up.
goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
And let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
You can email us at ritterdrassage@gmail.com. You can also reach us through other various channels, Facebook, so on. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Have a good ride.